Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my Would You Read It Challenge video for February 2026. The Would You Read It Challenge was a tag started by @2brody. I'll link to their information down below. The purpose of the tag was to select a certain amount of books by whatever metric you'd like, read the first sentence of each book, and then ask your audience if they would then continue with each book. I thought that one sentence really isn't enough, so I've basically elongated it to a few paragraphs to a page. And I've been doing this tag for several months, a couple years, and primarily for my metric of choosing books, I've been using the fiction division of the BookTube Prize. So the BookTube Prize was started by Robert Sheard in 2019 as a way for the literary bookternet to come together and judge the best in literary fiction or nonfiction that was published in English the year before. So right now we are currently judging 2025 releases. We are in the first round, the Octofinals. And I'm an official judge, and I can't discuss any of the books from the ballot I'm reading from in detail, but I can go to ballots of yesteryears. And so I decided to go back to the Octofinals, which would be the full long list for each year, and I'm focusing particularly on the fiction division. And as we just recently started a new year of judging in the BookTube Prize for 2026, I'm also starting a new recapping year, going to the very beginning of the 2023 long list in fiction. So that means I will be reading and reviewing from ballot A of those Octofinals. So I have 6 books to share with you, or the very beginnings of those 6 books to share with you. In fact, I've already read 3 of them. 2 of them I read because they advanced to the finals that year, and I read for the finals as a judge. And then one of those books I also read on my own. But I'll talk about that when I get to it. Without further ado, I think I'll just share the first few paragraphs of each book, and then I'll go through my thoughts and invite your own. So here I go, starting with book number 1. The letter arrives on a Friday, slit and resealed with a sticker, of course, as all their letters are. Inspected for your safety. Packed. It has caused confusion at the post office, the clerk unfolding the paper inside, studying it, passing it up to his supervisor, then the boss. But eventually it had been deemed harmless and sent on its way. No return address, only a New York postmark, 6 days old. On the outside, his name, Bird, and because of this he knows it is from his mother. He has not been Bird for a long time. We named you Noah after your father's father, his mother told him once. Bird was your own doing. The word that, when he said it, felt like him, something that did not belong on earth, a small, quick thing, an inquisitive chirp, a self that curled up at the edges. The school hadn't liked it. Bird is not a name, they'd said. His name is Noah. His kindergarten teacher, fuming. He won't answer when I call him. He only answers to Bird. Because his name is Bird, his mother said. He answers to Bird, so I suggest you call him that. The birth certificate be damned. She'd taken a Sharpie to every handout that came home, crossed off Noah, writing Bird on the dotted line instead. That was his mother, formidable and ferocious when her child was in need. And that was from Our Missing Hearts by Celeste Ng. Book 2. The Opposite of Nothing. On a hot night in apartment C4, Blandine Wilkins exits her body. She is only 18 years old, but she has spent most of her life wishing for this to happen. The agony is sweet, as the mystics promised. It is like your soul is being stabbed with light, the mystics said, and they were right about that too. The mystics call this experience the transverberation of the heart, or the seraph's assault, but no angel appears to Blandine. There is, however, a bioluminescent man in his 50s, glowing like a firefly. He runs to her and yells. Knife, cotton, hoof, bleach, pain, fur bliss. As Blandine exits herself, she's all of it. She is every tenant of her apartment building. She is trash and cherub, a rubber shoe on the seafloor, her father's orange jumpsuit, a brush raking through her mother's hair, the first and last Zorn automobile factory in Vacaville, Indiana, a nucleus inside the man who robbed her body when she was 14, a pair of red glasses on the face of her favorite librarian, a radish tugged from a bed of dirt. She is no one. She is Katie, the Portuguese water dog, who licked her face whenever the Foster family banished both of them in the snow because they were in the way, an algorithm for amplified content, and a blue slushie from the gas station, the first pair of tap shoes on the feet of a child actress, and the man telling her to try harder. And that was from The Rabbit Hutch by Tess Gunty. Book 3. First, I got myself born. A decent crowd was on hand to watch, as they've always given me that much. The worst of the job was up to me, my mother being, let's just say, out of it. On another day, they'd have seen her outside on the deck of her trailer home, good neighbors taking notice, pestering the tit of the trouble, as they will. All through the dog-breath air of late summer and fall, cast an eye up the mountain, and there'd she'd be, the little bleach blonde smoking her Pall Malls, hanging on that railing like she's the captain of her ship up there, and now might be the hour it's going down. This is an 18-year-old girl we're discussing, all on her own and as pregnant as it gets. The day she failed to show, it fell to Nance Peggott to go bang on the door, barge inside, and find her passed out on the bathroom floor, with all her junk all over the place and me already coming out. A slick fish-colored hostage, picking up grit from the vinyl tile, worming and shoving around because I'm still inside the sack that babies float in pre-real life. And that was from Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. Book 4. Joan, 1995. The house looked living. Mama squeezed my hand as the three of us gazed up at it, our bleary exhaustion no match for the animated brightness before us. Papa Myron selected and placed each stone of this house's foundation himself, she whispered to me and Maya, with the patience and diligence of a man deep in love. The low house was a cat napping in the shade of plum trees, not at all like the 3-story Victorian fortress we had just left. This house seemed somehow large and small at one. It sat on many different split levels that spanned out in all directions in a wild southern maze. A long driveway traversed the length of the yard, cut in half by a folding wooden gate. But what made the house breathe, what gave the house its lungs, was its front porch. Wide stone steps led to a front porch covered in heavy green ivy and honeysuckle and morning glory. Above the porch, my grandfather had erected a wooden pergola. Sunlight streaked through the green vines and wooden planks that turned the porch into an unkempt greenhouse. The honeysuckle drew hummingbirds the size of baseballs. They fluttered atop the canopy in shades of indigo and emerald and burgundy. I could see cats on the porch, a dozen of them, maybe an impossible number except for what a quick count told me. And that was from Memphis by Tara M. Stringfellow. Book 5. 3,000 Years Beneath a Eulogy. In Siberia, the thawing ground was a ceiling on the verge of collapse, sodden with ice melt and the mountain detritus of prehistory. The kilometer-long Patagaika crater had been widening with temperature rise like some god had unzipped the snow-topped marshlands, exposing woolly rhinos and other extinct beasts. Maskim, one of the biologists on staff and a helicopter pilot, pointed to the copper gash in the earth where my daughter had fallen shortly before discovering the 30,000-year-old remains of a girl. We circled the research outpost, a network of red geodesic domes peaking right below the tree line, before landing in a clearing. Maskim helped me out of the chopper and grabbed my bags and a sack of mail from the back. Everyone loved Clara, he said. Don't get weirded out if people don't talk about her, though. Most of us keep that kind of stuff to ourselves. I'm here to help, I said. Right, of course, Maskim said. There is, of course, another matter. I half listened as I studied the land, breathed air that, like the fossils beneath us, seemed trapped in time. He explained that a quarantine had been put into effect while we were in flight. No one had expected me to come finish Clara's work, let alone so soon. And that was from How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Magamatsu. And finally, Book 6, Liberation Day. It is the third day of interim, a rather long interim for us. All day we wonder, will Mr. U return to podium? Are the Untermeyers, Mr. U, Mrs. U, adult son Mike, pleased? If so, why? If not, why not? When would we next be asked to speak? Of what and what flavor? We wonder avidly, though not aloud, for there may be penalty. One may be unpinioned before the eyes of the upset, and others are brought to a rather penalty area. Here at the Untermeyers' a shed in the yard. In penalty, one sits in the dark among shovels. One may talk, but cannot speak. How could one? To enjoy the particular exhilaration of speaking, one must be pinioned to the speaking wall. Otherwise, one speaks like this, as I am speaking to you now. Plain, uninspired, nothing of beauty about it. And that is from Liberation Day, Stories by George Saunders. Okay, and maybe I'll just go ahead and start with Liberation Day since I own this book. And spoiler alert that I actually have read it. Huzzah, purchase justified. In fact, I got this at the National Book Festival some years ago, and I got it signed by the author right here. We go. And I will go ahead and say, perhaps unsurprisingly, that this was not one of the books I've read for the finals because short story collections rarely, I don't think ever, well, actually, arguably one of the ones in the finals in 2023 was a short story collection of sorts, but this one did not make it to the finals. And I probably would not have voted for it to advance if I read it in any round of the Book 2 prize. I had trouble with this collection, and a lot of the reason why is on that first page. George Saunders is a literary author who decided to step into the speculative science fiction space, and he's one of those authors who doesn't do it in the style that I like. It feels like he's taking lazy shortcuts, and you can tell that particularly by the fact that his world building is basically just making a bunch of normal words into proper pronouns, and it just feels very lazy and indulgent to me, and I just don't understand why you can't just continue to write realistic fiction if you're not going to take world building seriously. And you know, it just sounds so fake and so trite to me and so lazy, and I just had a lot of trouble overall, I think, with this collection. I didn't really connect with most of the stories that much. Next, I'll talk about How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamastu, which is the book that made it to the finals in 2023 that is arguably not only a short story collection, but once again, speculative fiction in a literary bent, as all of, you know, our Book 2 prize fiction is. And overall, this worked a lot better for me. I think I, you know, enjoyed it. It's not a book that medaled ultimately, but it was in the finals. And this is a collection that chronicles, you know, a time period in like the late 21st to 22nd century. The short story I read from, 30,000 Years Beneath a Eulogy, was about an archaeological research team in Siberia, and it, as it kind of mentioned, Clarice, a character who uncovered a preserved corpse of a Neanderthal woman. It's under quarantine, and it deals with plague and sort of virus, which, you know, has a modern day tint especially ever since COVID. And this first story I read from was about a father who went to the Arctic where his daughter was in an archaeological research team, and they uncovered the remains of a Neanderthal woman. And then it turned out that that corpse carried plague that actually, I think, had a significant effect on the resulting stories that go forward in time and on civilization. But that story in itself was about a father mourning a daughter mostly. It ended on a high note for me because I enjoyed the space travel stories that were at the end more than sort of the fantastical elements of the plague and how it was explored in some of the other stories. But in general, I could still appreciate some of the creativity, certainly in the world building, but also, you know, what I come to literary fiction for, which is the relationships. And I thought that those were pretty strong. The next book that I read for the finals was Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver, which won the whole shebang overall, and I think I voted for it in first place as well. This was a retelling of David Copperfield, the Charles Dickens story, imagining, this put upon lower class character as a rural boy from, modern day America. And we can tell from his beginnings here just how fraught a lot of his life could be, that his mother is obviously struggling with what we realize quickly is addiction, and opioids are a big part of this story and a big part of Demon's life going forward. But I think this book definitely had its own style. Like, I think you could tell that it has sort of a certain affectation that I thought to me sounded pretty southern, but also a little bit almost lighthearted, I think, which in a way I do think speaks to how Charles Dickens was understood by, scholars who study him, that, in broader culture he's seen as really dark and depressing, but in fact he kind of had sort of a more satirical or lighter affectation. And certainly I think Demon Copperhead did, which made the book much more digestible given its really serious subject matters. I think it really made you much more optimistic and hopeful that, Demon Copperhead would make it out okay in the end, and it just led something a little more optimistic to the story. On to the books I didn't read. I'll start with book number 1, which was Our Missing Hearts by Celeste Ng. And I think there's something similar in this book to the speculative ones that I talked about before, because this also goes into like the near future and discusses a sort of a more authoritarian turn, I believe, in U.S. politics, and that's what's happening with this relationship with a mother and son, that the mother is in hiding, and that's why she doesn't have any sort of markers on the letter she's sending to her son. And maybe it sent up a few red flags at the postal office, but not enough to, I guess, stop the letter from going to the son. And there's also some markers in here that I feel like are kind of stereotypical authoritarian stuff, like, the school getting all high and mighty and up in arms about the boy being wanted to be called Bird rather than Noah, which frankly I think is a little too heavy-handed for me. Like, I'm just wondering what types of schools would be that, intense about it, but maybe that's me not being fair to the fact that this is obviously a dystopian story, and that I should give it a little more space to breathe. But yeah, I mean, mostly we're just hearing a little bit about their backstory, and there's just the hint, I think, that the two of them aren't in the same place, because she's sending a letter and it's cloaked about where she is exactly. Then we have The Rabbit Hutch for book 2 by Tess Gunty, which maybe is speculative, because we have this character, Blandine Watkins, who exits her body. And I'm not sure if this is metaphorical, like, this stuff with the mystics could just be about taking drugs and, feeling something. Or it could be, an actual speculative element that, she is supernaturally allowed to escape her body and sort of become one with the world around her. And, I stopped my quotations like in the middle of a really long paragraph, but I think you kind of got the feel. It went back and forth a little about like the types of things she was feeling as she exited her body. The ones that interested me the most were the most character specific about her, like especially learning things like that she was in foster care, and that she was, abused in foster care, which doesn't seem surprising for stories you hear out of the foster care system. So yeah, I mean, in that way, I'm semi-intrigued about who this character is, but I kind of want to get past all of this sort of, language exercise about getting out of her body, and let's get her back in her body and get her into a story already. And then finally, the final story I didn't read yet was book 4, which was Memphis by Tara M. Stringfellow. And this one definitely seems the most grounded and down to earth because we're following a family as they move from one house to another. Although the house they're moving to is one that their family has history with. The grandfather built the house. And it seems like a really distinctive and quirky house, like with multiple split levels, and it's on a large property. And Stringfellow went through a lot of lurid description about it that makes the house really come alive and seems like it would be an intriguing setting, hopefully for intriguing characters to then inhabit. So yeah, there we go with all of that. Of the 3 books that I haven't read yet, I don't know, maybe I would go with the Celeste Ng with Our Missing Hearts to keep up with that speculative element, to see what I think of how she handles it as a literary fiction writer. Also, I did just recently read the Best American Short Stories edition that she edited, so maybe I should, well, I'm saying maybe I owe her, you know, a little more allegiance for that, but the truth is I'm probably not going to read any of these other 3 books on the ballot because I have so much to read as it is, especially the books I have to read for the 2026 Booktube Prize Octofinals. You know, I have about a month left before that ballot is due. So that about covers it for me now. I'll leave links below to the Goodreads pages for all 6 of these books, and also to the reviews I wrote for the 3 that I read. And I'll also have a link to my playlist of old book tags, including all of my Would You Read It challenges of before. And I hope to be back on this channel in the near future with my last AM reading video of February, so stay tuned for that. I'd love to hear your thoughts about these books. If you've read any of them or any of them sound interesting to you, it's always interesting to get other people's perspectives. And to my fellow Booktube Prize judges, I hope you're doing well with your reading this round, and I'll be looking forward to your thoughts as well when the time comes. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.